Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the third session of the Luce-Hartford Conference in Christian-Muslim Relations at Hartford Seminary. We're delighted you're here, and we're thankful that you're spending some time with us. A little bit about Hartford Seminary. Oh, first, let me introduce myself. I'm David Grafton, and I'm the academic dean here at Hartford Seminary and professor of Islamic Studies and Muslim Christian Relations, and director of the Duncan Black McDonald Center at Hartford Seminary. And now about Hartford Seminary. Hartford Seminary was founded in 1834 and is a non-denominational graduate school for religious and theological studies. And what makes us unique is our multi-faith environment. We have students from a number of different religious traditions, particularly the Abrahamic traditions, the Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I'll say a little bit more about our degrees later in the evening. Hartford Seminary seeks out students who are interested in serving their communities and deepening their own faiths, as well as understanding the faiths of others. And so this is why this conference is one of the avenues that's so important to the work that we do. This is the 5th year of our Christian-Muslim Relations Conference series that has been made possible through a grant from the Henry Luce Foundation. And so we're grateful and thankful to the Henry Luce Foundation. These Luce-Hartford conferences have focused on contemporary and timely issues that affect Muslims and Christians and their relationships around the world. In past years, we focused on issues of refugees and forced migration, the environment, race and racism, the role of women's voices and leadership in religious communities, and this year, the pandemics. We've constructed the conference around the theme of the pandemics because we recognize that the global health pandemic of COVID-19 has been laid over top and intertwined with the long-standing pandemic of racism in the United States and North America, and ethnic and interreligious tensions in various places around the world. This is the 2nd year of hosting the Luce-Hartford Conference virtually, and so the format has allowed us to include participants from all around the world, as well as to welcome registrants from all around the world. We began last evening on Monday night with session 1. We had session 2 this afternoon, which had panel participants from Lebanon, India, and Indonesia. And tonight, I'm delighted that we move into the 3rd panel on the pandemics, interfaith, and the arts. And so for that, I'm delighted to welcome a colleague of mine, Carol Schersten-LaHerde, who we've known each other for a long time. She's a distinguished affiliate professor at the Lutheran School of Theology at Chicago, and educational outreach consultant for a Center of Christian-Muslim Engagement for Peace and Justice. I encourage you to check out their website. There's a lot of stuff going on there. She's been professor of biblical studies, Islam, and interreligious relations at places like St. Thomas in Minnesota, Wake Forest, and Fordham. And she's published numerous scholarly articles and books and co-authored a very helpful book called Engaging Others, Knowing Ourselves, a Lutheran Calling in a Multi-Religious World. Even if you're not Lutheran, you can certainly appreciate the case studies in this book. They're very practical. Dr. LaHerde received a BA from Augustana College in Illinois, an MA in English from the University of Chicago, and a PhD in religious studies from the University of Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. So I'm going to turn this over to this moderator, who is going to then introduce the topic for this evening and her colleagues. Carol, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, David. When my husband and I moved to Chicago in 2006, we discovered an unexpected treasure, the work of a truly innovative theater company, then called Silk Road. We also have developed a very valued friendship with the co-directors and co-founders, Malik Jelani and Jamil Khoury. Our presentation tonight is entitled Silk Road Rising, Interfaith Storytelling and the Art of Understanding. And that's what it's all about, understanding, especially appreciation for Asian, Middle Eastern, and Muslim history and culture, and acceptance across many kinds of cultural and ethnic barriers. But before I introduce the first speaker in our group, I have a special announcement. Just a few hours ago in my inbox came this announcement from the Field Foundation of Illinois, which partners with the MacArthur Foundation in a new award called the 2021 Leaders for a New Chicago. And it just so happens that one of the 10 recipients is the partner of our speaker, Jamil Khoury, Malik Jelani. I'll just read a couple sentences from the nomination information on the website for this important award. Malik, in his role as co-executive artistic director of Silk Road Rising, counters negative images and stereotypes of Middle Eastern and Muslim peoples with representation grounded in authentic, multifaceted human experience. Malik has worked tirelessly to build an inclusive arts ecology in Chicago, providing theater artists and professionals from Silk Road backgrounds with opportunities for career growth. And finally, Malik is uniquely positioned as a Muslim, queer, person of color, and immigrant in a position of leadership. I am just so proud to be affiliated as a volunteer with this company. And now I'll tell you a little bit about the other half of this fantastic dynamic duo of creative arts. The co-founder and co-executive artistic director of Silk Road Rising is Jamil Khoury. He is a producer, playwright, essayist, and filmmaker. He has an educational background in religious studies, international relations, and nonprofit management. Here's a very small sample of the plays and films he has authored or co-authored. WASP, White, Arab, Slovak, Pole. Sacred Stages, a church, a theater, and a story. The Four Hijabs. And this one, which is a mouthful to say, Multi meets Poly. Multiculturalism and polyculturalism go on a first date. Please welcome from Silk Road Rising, my friend Jamil Khoury.
Thank you so much, Carol. I don't know how I live up to all of that introduction. And we are obviously thrilled for Malik and this much deserved award and recognition that he received today. I want to build on what Carol said, and also a big thanks to Hartford Seminary for including us in this conference and in these conversations, and recognizing these intersections between storytelling and interfaith understanding and art making and community outreach. So building on what Carol was saying, Silk Road Rising is a community-centered art making and art service organization. We are rooted in Pan-Asian, North African, and Muslim experiences through live theater, digital media, and arts education. We challenge disinformation, cultivate new narratives, and promote a culture of continuous learning. So I said Pan-Asian, and I want to explain that. We define Pan-Asian as the cultures that stretch from Japan to Turkey and Kazakhstan to Indonesia, including their diaspora communities, and of course, connecting to North Africa and parts of Mediterranean Europe. The company, Malik and I co-founded it in 2002. Malik is originally from Pakistan, and my father was from Syria. We conceptualized Silk Road Rising, originally Silk Road Theater Project, as an intentional and creative response to the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. So we recognized that the consequences of that catastrophic day would reverberate for years to come, posing unique and urgent challenges for artists of all backgrounds. Harnessing that power, we set out to challenge the ideology and hatred that fueled the 9/11 attacks and the anti-Arab and anti-Muslim backlash that immediately followed. Our vision was to counter negative images and stereotypes of Middle Eastern and Muslim peoples with representation grounded, as Carol just said, in authentic, multifaceted, and patently human experiences. Our focus quickly expanded beyond the Middle East to encompass the vast territory known historically as the Silk Road, a network of trade routes stretching from China to Syria. The legacy of the Silk Road provided us the narrative from which our core values would appear: discovery, pluralism, and empathy. Obviously, those trade routes, from roughly the 2nd century BCE till roughly the 1600s Christian era, were the world's dominant land routes, and they adjoined these many areas, creating an east-west, or these many regions, creating an east-west corridor linking Japan with Italy. I know you're hearing a lot of geography references, but it's important to us because it really speaks to the breadth of the stories that we grapple with. So these transcontinental caravans resulted not only in trade, of which silk was an important commodity, but also in tremendous cultural interchange among the peoples of the regions, interactions that fostered the exchange of ideas and the fusion of art and aesthetics. The legacy of the Silk Road spawned rich traditions of storytelling, primarily oral narrative and epic poetry. As we ourselves are storytellers, Silkworth Rising sees in the Silk Road a geographic pole star and a guiding metaphor for our unique brand of cultural interchange. If we were to trace on a contemporary map the many trade routes associated with this legacy, the modern nation states of this vast territory would comprise some 2/3 of the world's population. From a political perspective, the Silk Road represents a model of interdependence and connectivity, serving to unite diverse peoples across geographically contiguous regions prior to the onset of European colonialism and imperialism and its strategies of occupy, divide, and rule. We understand that representation matters. It molds perceptions, informs conversations, and influences policies. We also understand that cultures are inherently linked. We seek out the intersections of cultures without undermining the specificities of cultures. And we strive to create a world that values art over ideology and inquiry over dogma. We view our work as an intentional strategy to shift and expand our community's narratives and to assist other organizations in their efforts to include Pan-Asian, North African, and Muslim stories. We center politics that are anti-racist, anti-colonial, and pro-feminist. And we tell stories that are by us, about us, and for all. The scene we are about to watch is the opening scene of Silkworth Rising's video play, Obstacle Course. Obstacle Course was released in 2019 and can be viewed for its entirety at obstaclecourse.tv. Obstaclecourse.tv. I adapted Obstacle Course from my full-length stage play, Mosque Alert, that received its world premiere at Silkworth Rising in 2016. The story is set in Naperville, Illinois, which is a western suburb of Chicago, and explores reactions to a proposed Islamic community center on the site of a beloved landmark. Allyship, municipal politics, and Islamophobia all intersect in this head-on collision between not in my backyard fear-mongering, well-intentioned liberalism, and the peaceful practice of faith. With no further ado, please enjoy the first scene of Obstacle Course.
It's an honor and a privilege to be standing here today before Naperville's esteemed Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm Dalila Khan, an architect with extensive national experience designing houses of worship. I'm also a proud member of Naperville's Al-Andalus Mosque. As you know, our community has outgrown our existing mosque, although it's a building we're all very fond of, as modest and nondescript as it may be. The time has come for us to enter the next phase of our story, the proposed Al-Andalus Library and Community Center, a magnificent new complex we hope to build in the heart of downtown Naperville. Our dream resides at the much-beloved, though long-defunct, Old Nichols Library. We envision a full restoration of the original 1898 Old Nichols as a first-of-its-kind, community-wide library dedicated to the study of Islam and world religions. In addition, we'll tear down the library's annex and construct an entirely new one, a modern, eco-friendly, state-of-the-art prayer hall and community center, blending traditional Islamic design elements within a sleek, contemporary American aesthetic. It is neither imposing nor overwhelming. It is elegant and subtle, a handsome, forward-thinking, clean design that pays tribute to the past and projects confidence onto the future. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Dalila, darling, that was fabulous.
Now, here's the scenario, people.
Dalila has just introduced our project. The notoriously deadpan members of the Planning and Zoning Commission are beginning to warm up to her.
Oh, what an impressive design. Brava. It blends in so seamlessly with its surroundings, beautiful and refined, yet so unobtrusive. Who knew that a woman in a headscarf could be so creative, so expressive? But it's still a Muslim mosque, so
Let's help a sister out and start channeling our inner white person. We'll pretend we're them. The floor is now open to questions. Ladies and gentlemen.
we're immigrants. We know how to role play.
Right. Okay. Excuse me, Miss Dalala. Now, you know, I have nothing against Muslims. In fact, some of my best friends are Muslims. It's not about y'all being terrorists.
I think you mean terrorist sympathizers. It sounds more polite.
This isn't about religion. I'm simply concerned about traffic.
I share your concerns. We've done exhaustive studies on traffic flow and the estimated number of cars.
Of course, I'm not worried about them blowing us up. I'm worried about parking.
Thank you for bringing that up. Downtown Naperville has thousands of free parking spaces within blocks of our proposed masjid.
But what about garbage disposal?
Yeah. Do you Mohammedans even recycle?
The plans we've submitted are certifiably sustainable and eco-friendly. Ours will be the greenest building in all of DuPage County.
But it's the height, too.
I know. It's the setback.
The setback, yeah.
No, it's the building materials.
Exactly.
By golly, it's the color scheme.
An atrocious color scheme. And even worse, heaven help us, the landscaping.
Yes, way too much grass.
Are you folks doing all right? You seem confused.
Personally, I have been losing sleep worrying about their drainage plans.
Yuck, sewage, so filthy and smelly.
The real issue is overdevelopment and overcrowding.
Precisely. Do we really need another building in Naperville? I say return that patch of land to the buffalo.
And what's wrong with sitting in pews? They take up so much space, those Muslims, prostrating all over the floor.
It is true that the practices of Islamic worship require more square footage per person than
Now, I'm not a Freudian or anything, but I had a dream last night that I turned my TV onto the Scary Movie channel, and what was playing? The Mosque That Ate Naperville.
Oh my God. What do you think it meant?
It was definitely an omen.
Bad zoning karma.
Hey, you woman in burqa, what's the difference between a Muslim, an Arab, a terrorist, and a towelhead?
Excuse me? It's those darn pejoratives. They keep evolving.
Is it true that Muslims broadcast their call to prayer 5 times a day from loudspeakers?
Why, that's noise pollution. You'll wake up the babies and frighten the elderly.
rest assured, my good people. In a predominantly non-Muslim environment, like downtown Naperville, we would never broadcast our call to-
Pardon me, hillbilly, white trash woman with money.
Who, me?
Not a Southern accent, please.
Yes, you. Do you belong to a church
Well, of course.
in Naperville?
Well, yes.
By any chance, does your church ring bells on Sunday morning?
It does.
Well then, Friday noontime prayers will broadcast our call to prayer, but only at sound levels equal to your church bells, not a decibel higher.
But bells don't ring in Arabic.
Cut. Time out. I appreciate the coaching, my friends, but as white people, you're way over the top.
We're the warm and fuzzy white people, Dalila.
Great, thank you for engaging that scene. It's always so much fun to return to that project and that particular exchange. I want obstacle course to advance our conversations about religious pluralism. I'm not talking about religious tolerance or religious coexistence, nor am I asking anyone to proselytize or convert to another faith. I'm talking about dynamic interchange and learning. The idea that one can be better at practicing their own faith if they understand and appreciate other faiths. Obstacle course centers Muslims, their allies, and their adversaries. I wrote it as a Christian Arab American ally and as the husband of a Muslim man. I want it to be a springboard for inquiry about Muslimness within our broader religious landscapes. Rarely is it acknowledged that Islam has deep and meaningful relationships with Christianity and Judaism, Hinduism and Buddhism, secularism and feminism, and with myriad movements for democracy, human rights, and social justice. When explored, these relationships reveal vigorous religious pluralism. And now I have the very distinct honor and privilege of introducing Corey Pond. Corey is a director, dramaturg, casting director, and producer, and I would say the backbone of Silkworth Rising. He joined Silkworth Rising in 2011 as a house manager, became our production manager in 2012, and then associate producer in 2017. During his time with Silkworth Rising, he has worked on 25 productions, nearly 50 staged readings, 3 video plays, and 1 documentary film. Corey holds a BA in theater from Illinois State University, where his studies concentrated on directing, but also explored theater management, dramaturgy, and literary adaptation. And so it is my pleasure to give you Corey Pond.
Thank you, Jamil. So yes, I'm Corey Pond. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I'm the adapter and co-director for Christmas Mubarak, which is another project we want to share with you. This was originally conceived in the summer of 2018 by Jamil and by his husband that he's mentioned, Malik Galani. Our theater is hosted by the First United Methodist Church at the historic Chicago Temple. And we were working on creating a holiday concert in partnership with their choir to celebrate the relationship between our theater and the church. Jamil has long wanted to create a project that looks at the parallels between Christian Jesus and the Islamic Jesus. And so this opportunity felt like the perfect chance to finally do that. Since the church choir would be joining us, they could supply the Christian narratives of Jesus through traditional carols, and our actors would provide the Islamic versions of Jesus, Isa, through text. Our goal was to create an interfaith musical that holds space for dialogue between Christians and Muslims without favoring one tradition over the other. And so Christmas Mubarak was born. In just 3 months, we had a first draft of the script and dove into rehearsals. After a month of rehearsals, Christmas Mubarak ran for a total of 10 performances and immediately gained buzz from the audience, from our audiences. Our favorite praise that the musical got was when one patron called it the Muslim Godspell. Since the whole show came together in just a few short months, we considered this production a workshop rather than the world premiere. Based on the audience feedback, we knew we had something special here, and so we of course wanted to revisit the show and give it a full production. Based on the shows we already had lined up for the future, we knew that Christmas 2021 was the earliest we'd be able to mount it again. When the pandemic hit, we still remained hopeful and are still hopeful for a 2021 return of the show. And so we have used some of this time to continue the development of the script. We've brought in a co-director, Reza Mirsajidi, who will also be our music director. The original workshop had a cast of 4 and the choir that I mentioned from the church of 8. For this next iteration, we will have an ensemble of 8 who do it all. My biggest priority then has been to rework the script so that it fits that cast of 8. Because of the pandemic, we could not do our usual annual donor appreciation salon in person, but we of course still wanted to engage our donors, even virtually. And so we decided it would be the perfect opportunity to share some of the updates we have made to the script with our supporters and get their feedback. And so we set to creating a virtual staging of a selection of the script. We've got a clip for that I'm going to share with you. We're going to start about halfway in, so I wanted to give you a little bit of context before we watch it. We'll open on the angel Gabriel, telling Maryam that she is about to give birth to Jesus, to Isa. So you'll notice that sometimes the captions will be a golden yellow rather than white. And what that is signaling is that that passage is from the Quran translated into English. And with that, I hope you enjoy this clip.
We sent our spirit to her, who stood before her in the shape of a well-formed human being.
Indeed, I seek refuge in the most merciful from you. So leave me if you should be fearing of Allah.
I am only the messenger of your Lord, to give you news of a pure boy.
How can I have a boy while no man has touched me and I have not been unchaste?
Thus it will be. Your Lord says, it is easy for me, and we will make him a sign to the people and a mercy from us, and it is a matter already decreed. We breathe into her of our spirit and appointed her and her son to be a sign to all beings. So she conceived the child.
The Quran confirms the virginity of Maryam.
But how did Miriam, the virgin, exactly conceive Isa?
In 2 verses of the Quran, which use the exact same expression, we hear Allah stating, "We breathed into her from our spirit. فَنَفَخْنَا فِيهَا مِنْ رُوحِنَا."
The verses do not explain how this took place, and hence classical Muslim interpreters have offered their various explanations. Some wrote that Jibreel, as Allah's agent, breathed into Maryam's bosom until the spirit reached her womb. Others wrote that Jibreel blew into Maryam's sleeve, or the side of her toe.
Or maybe,
Yet, any consideration of sexual relationship between Maryam and Jibreel have been ruled out by Muslim interpreters.
With Maryam, in the sanctuary was Yusuf, a cousin of hers, who served her and conversed with her from behind a screen. He was the first to learn of her pregnancy and was concerned and saddened by it, fearing too that he might be thought sinful and of ill repute. So he said to her,
"Maryam, can there be plant without seed?"
Yes.
How so?
Allah created the first seed without a plant. But then you might say, if he had not sought the aid of the seed, the matter would have been too difficult for him.
Bid el Can a tree grow without water or rain?
Do you not know that seeds, plants, water, rain, and trees have a sole creator?
Can there be children or pregnancy without a male?
Yes.
How so?
Do you not know that Allah created Adam and his wife Hawa without pregnancy, without a male, and without a mother?
Yes. Tell me then what's happened to you.
Allah has brought me glad tidings of a word from him, whose name is the Messiah Isa, son of Maryam.
To call Christ the Word of Allah
بكل الماتن من الله.
is not to deify him, but to verify his status as a prophet.
Because of his high status as prophet, Isa becomes a complete manifestation of Allah, one who conveys the message of Allah, one who can speak on behalf of Allah, and thus the word of Allah.
This term referred to the miraculous creating of Isa without a biological father and with Allah's creative word. Be. Kun.
In the days I was pregnant with Isa, whenever there was someone in my house speaking with me, I would hear Isa praising Allah inside me. And whenever I was alone and there was no one with me, I would converse with him, and he with me, while he was still in my womb.
O holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, oh, night divine, oh, night when Christ was born, oh, night divine, oh, night, oh, night divine.
She withdrew with him to a remote place, and the pains of childbirth drove her to the trunk of a palm tree.
Oh, I wish I had died before this and was in oblivion, forgotten.
Verily, Maryam bore Isa for 9 hours.
Each hour of which was a month.
But a voice called her from below her. Do not grieve. Your Lord has provided beneath you a stream, and shake towards you the trunk of the palm tree. It will drop upon you ripe, fresh dates. So eat, drink, and be contented.
The voice here has often been interpreted as an angel.
But it has also been interpreted as the baby Isa, who was right to be born.
If you see any mortal, remind yourself.
Surely I have vowed a fast to the beneficent Allah, so I shall not speak to any man today.
Then she brought him to her people, carrying him. They said,
Oh, Miriam, you've certainly done a thing unprecedented.
O sister of Harun, your father was not a man of evil, nor was your mother unchaste.
So she pointed to him. They said,
How can we speak to one who is in the cradle a child?
Isa said,
Indeed, I am the servant of Allah. He has given me the scripture and made me a prophet, and he has made me blessed wherever I be, and has enjoined on me prayer and almsgiving as long as I live, and dutiful to my mother, and he has not made me insolent, unblessed. And peace be upon me the day I was born, and the day I die, and the day I shall be raised alive.
Come to Bethlehem and see him whose birth the angels sing. Come adore on bended knee Christ the Lord, the newborn King. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo. See him in a manger laid, Jesus, Lord of heaven and earth. Mary, Joseph, lend your aid. With us sing our Savior's birth. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo.
Thank you everyone for watching that with us. I just wanted to voice one thing that Carol put in the chat for us. If you do have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A function too. So I hope this selection gave you a good sample of the style of the show and how the various sources that we're pulling from fit together. When I started research on the show, I don't think I had read any of the Quran before, and I didn't know anything about Hadith or Tafsir. I'm from a small town in central Illinois where I was raised Methodist, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the hosts of Silkworth Rising are also Methodists. The church's motto of open hearts, open minds, open doors, I think informed my approach to this show. I'm trying to hold Islam and Christianity and the many denominations of each equal and embracing the difference, embracing the dissonance and tension. Our premiere of this video was a wonderful holiday event with donors like the salon I mentioned. Our salons always include some sort of performance aspect and then a conversation with the donors. It translated quite well to the digital world. We found ways to engage the audience by having them share photos of celebratory moments that we could all then see. And we even had a few mocktails that we taught them to make so we could have a toast in the middle of the event. When our salons are in person, we're limited though by the size of the venue and also our budget for food and drinks because hospitality is a core value of Silkworth Rising. But since we were meeting online this time, we didn't have those limits to the audience and we were able to invite donors of all levels to the event rather than picking 85 to fill the room with. Yeah. And also at the event, we got to premiere demos of 2 original songs that we've commissioned. They're from Muslim musicians in Chicago that we've worked with, Kareem Naji and Ronnie Malley. One of the songs is called Christmas Mubarak, and it will elaborate on the shared elements of the Christmas narrative. And the other, Peace Be Upon Them, looks at the key prophets of Islam, especially the ones shared with Christianity. We're fortunate to have so many wonderful collaborators on this project, and now I'd like to introduce you all to one of them, Fouad Taimur. I often refer to him as the fourth wise man. Fouad is a Chicago-based Egyptian-American playwright and actor who you saw in the clip of Obstacle Course earlier. He's also a professor of chemical engineering at the Illinois Institute of Technology. Fawad is an artistic associate of Silkworth Rising, where we've held both private and public readings of his plays. Most recently, we co-produced the world premiere of his play, Twice, Thrice, Thrice. In fact, that play was our last in-person production prior to the pandemic. And on top of being nominated for Best New Play in Chicago, it was also published by Stage Rights. As a playwright, Fawad was uniquely positioned to serve as our Islamic consultant for Christmas Mubarak. He has been an invaluable resource during the development of the script, from picking the right translations to the Quran, to providing feedback on how certain ideas and moments might land for audience members, and so much more. Fawad, please join us here on video, and we'd love for you to speak to us about your role as Islamic consultant.
Thank you so much, Corey. Thank you for this lovely introduction, and I'm very grateful to be here with all of you. As Corey said, my role on this production was to be a resource. Whenever Corey needed any direction or changes or things like that, he would come to me, and I would go and look at the sources and confirm whether we can go this direction or not. So when Corey and Jamil first came to me and said, would you be interested in being the Islamic consultant on this project? Of course, a big responsibility, because even though I'm a scholar, I'm not a scholar in theology and religion. I'm a scholar in engineering. But I also had a great interest that I had developed and practiced over a couple of decades, really, in my theater work, of looking for accurate representation of Muslims and Islam on stage, not only in what I write, but also in multiple projects that either Silk Road was doing or connecting me to, or I connected to the others. And I always was very happy to help in any way I could in those things. But this project specifically fascinated me. And the fascination came from the fact that the story we're telling, story of Jesus, is a Christian story. It's actually the Christian story. But we're looking at that when this story was told to Muslims, it was revealed through the Quran. So it was an Islamic presentation of the Christian story to Muslims everywhere. And then what we're trying to do now is to actually take the Islamic telling of the Christian story and present it on stage to an audience that is predominantly Christian, but also has a good number of Muslims, Jews, and Buddhists, and every other religion. And to add to the challenge is that the need to actually balance everything with the requirement of having a dramatic flow in there. We were not trying to do an academic exercise there. We're trying to tell a story and have people engaged and putting in the song and every other element in there. And of course, without antagonizing anybody. But that's easier said than done. So there always will be someone who will find problems with something we're doing. And we had several talkbacks and events at every performance. I attended many of those, and we found that there are lots of people who took exception to some of what was happening. One specific lady in the audience was very upset at the way that Jesus was represented, and said, that's not my Jesus. This is not the Jesus I know. And we tried to explain to her that we are not trying to change the image of Jesus. We're just telling you how Jesus is portrayed in Islam so that you are aware of it. And most of the audience, by the way, when they saw this, they said, we had no idea that the Quran referred to Jesus that much, that Islam actually has a tradition of reverence for Jesus and respect for Jesus. That was one situation. There's another one who happened to be a friend. She's Catholic, married to a Muslim Arab man who was a colleague of mine. He now is in another university. And when she saw the play, she was very happy. But at the end, we were talking, and she said, there's something that is confusing me, not confusing, but weighing heavy on her a little bit. And basically, I then realized that she misses certain elements of the Christian story that she believes are essential to the story of Jesus. And because those are not in the Quranic version, she felt that something was amiss. Of course, we were not immune from being criticized and attacked by Muslims as well. We had lots of Muslims in the audience who came and said, no, this is not how it is. You cannot use this, you cannot use that. And of course, this also gets complicated by the fact that Islam has multiple sects that do not all agree on every single detail. There's an agreement on the core principle and on Muhammad and on the Quran and some of the hadith, but there are lots of little details that come in. Personally, I learned a lot through this process. Corey would come and bring stuff, and then I look at it and I said, where did you find this? I never heard this when I was growing up. And I would go to my friends and I say, do you know that there is this and this is buried in that place and things like that? And they say, no, we don't have that at all. But this comes from that sect or this sect and things like that. And we managed together to go through all of this and find some authentication of who exactly believes that, stick to the factual and do some of that. I had people come to me and say, how could you be an Islamic consultant on that project, yet allow for it to say that this and this about the religion? And I would tell them, you have not been listening clearly, because we did not say this is what Islam believes about this issue. We say this is what, for example, the Ahmadi sect says. And everything is put in that context so that it is factual and not an opinion. And that was really the whole core of what we were doing. Through the talkbacks, I started actually hearing things from the audience, and I developed a sort of a position statement for myself. I started telling people that what we are really want to tell you is there are major differences between the Islamic and Christian stories of Jesus. Divinity of Jesus is probably the top one. The crucifixion is, equally important and impactful. But, there's the story, did he speak as a child? Did he walk on water? All of these things that are different between this and this telling. And I say, we could debate those things forever, but we will never, ever get to resolve them. We can't. But the most important thing that we're trying to tell you is that Islam believes in Jesus. No Muslim can be a full Muslim without actually believing in Jesus. And it holds Jesus in a highly respected and revered position. And that's the core message that we want to send to you. So, and that's what we need to work on in terms of creating some interfaith collaboration. Of course, everything I told you was based on audience feedback and reaction, and reading the room and listening to so many things. But we also had work that tried to gauge the opinion of scholars, and that's basically what Carol has been doing. So I'm going to pass it over to Carol LaHerd to tell you about that and other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Fuad. Well, I was one of the lucky people who got to see the workshop production in December 2018. It was pretty exciting. And I was also privileged to be there when we had a bit of controversy at the end of it. What I remember about that production was the little quiz that was in the program book that everybody in the audience was absorbed with, because it was a series of passages and we were invited to guess whether each passage was from the Quran or the Bible. And I have to say I missed a few. It was pretty embarrassing, but that was a big hit with the audience. And then, as Corey mentioned, in summer of 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, the work was begun on expanding and rewriting the play for a live audience in late 2021. And at that point, I was invited to compile a group of interfaith scholars to do a number of possible things that we could give them to choose from. Comment on the script and production in short essays that would appear online and in the program book. Be available for taped interviews and talkbacks during the production, and also help with educational efforts in 2022 and beyond, and any or all of the above. I myself was invited to draft a longer piece on Islamic and Christian scripture, commentary, and lived tradition, and the way each of these appears in the play. Now, a status report a year later, and how these efforts, my efforts with this interfaith panel, have been hindered and helped by pandemic conditions. The pandemic was definitely a deterrent. I sent individualized invitations to interreligious scholars and clergy, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim. I asked them essentially to read the script, send comments, and contribute an essay response of 400 to 600 words. Well, over a period of 8 months, I queried more than 20 people to result in the 5 finished short essays we now have for the program book. I'd say that was a bit of a deterrent. Maybe it wasn't just the pandemic, but some ways COVID-19, I think, played a role. I think some people were so overwhelmed, they never replied to my emails, even though I sent 1 or 2 polite reminders. Some faculty did answer me eventually and said, sorry, I'm overwhelmed by learning how to do online teaching. Of course, I could identify with that. The wife of one had just given birth to their 5th child, a pretty good excuse, and some cited publishing deadlines. However, on a positive side, several who declined to write essays did contribute valuable notes on the script. Here are a few examples. A Muslim NGO leader asked us to clarify the character of Mary's cousin called Yusuf in Arabic. Apparently, I know that that character is known from medieval Muslim commentary on the Quran, but it doesn't appear in the he doesn't appear in the Holy Book itself. So that was a helpful note. A rabbi suggested a way to improve the script's description of historical Judaism. And then he also declined to write an essay, but in his final email to me, he concluded, this is an important effort. The play can make clear that Jesus is prophetic, not divine, but has a role in the communication of God to humanity. That is the Islamic Jesus. Don't try to communicate a lot more, is how he ended. I think in his view, trying to communicate more was opening a can of worms. But the pandemic also made a space for enriched collaboration. As Corey told you, there was a Zoom salon event in December 2020, and the audience for that got to see a longer version of the video clip Corey showed you tonight. And then I was able to give a direct link to the recording of that whole video clip to the Interfaith Scholars panel and to people who were still on the fence about whether they wanted to commit to writing an essay for us. One scholar had been pretty negative about the script until he saw the video. Then he reread it with new eyes and became much more enthusiastic about the whole project. I'd say overall, this enhanced view of the main characters came through the video clip, which probably would never happen if it weren't for the need for an online salon event, shows up in an impact on the essays. I'll give you, again, a few illustrations. One of our essayists is an Egyptian Muslima professor of Arabic. She says in her essay, to live together, we do not need to share the same beliefs. We need to have the same heart. I commend the play for foregrounding this point early with these words. But it is important to note that we are not attempting in any way to deny, erase, blend, or blur the very real differences between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This isn't about obscuring the beauty and wisdom of each tradition. And then this from a Protestant professor of Latinx studies. This beautifully scripted and dramatized play reminds us that faith most fully pulses with life only when it is porous. The spiritual life must be soft to the touch if it is to hold strong. It must be open if it is to breathe. The character of Mariam especially emanates this porous strength. To conclude my part, this collaboration among theater artists and academics has so far proved fruitful, despite some complications from the pandemic and with a few unexpected benefits. And now I think we have a few minutes before the formal Q&A. A question has already come in for Corey, which I think you have time to answer before the official Q&A. As an artist who had in mind a live performance, what was it like for you to have to shift to thinking about performing this online for the December Salon? Was that hard? And I'll add, and how did you do it? How did you pull it off?
Yeah, well, I've started off, there's a scholar that we know named Mohammad Reza Babai, who is studying digital engagement, even in live performances too. So he was a great sounding board, and he and I talked through the event for donors, how to keep it engaging, but also the performance aspect of it too. I mean, there's a lot of theaters that have pivoted obviously to online things. A lot of them are opting for just like a live Zoom performance. So we talked about like, what are the advantages of that? What are the issues? And our main concern was, what if someone's internet cuts out or whatever? And we have so much experience already pre-recording and editing together. We've got 2 different editors we work with often that make fabulous videos for us. And so, yeah, we opted for that of pre-recording. What we did was we met with the actors in rehearsals online on Zoom, and like they gave us tours of their home, showing us the different places they could set up to film. And so we tried to find ways to unite them, like our narrators trying to have very specific backdrops for what their environment is, what their personality is. And then, yeah, they were just all edited together. And my co-director, Reza Mirsajidi, did the music, which I can't speak to how difficult that was, but I can only imagine having, especially that last song had 3 voices in unison, trying to get them recorded and overlapped properly. And he did a great job. I think the music is so fun in this. Oh, you're muted, Carol.
I'm muted. Thank you. Thank you. And there a question that a couple of us have for Jamil. If you want to field this now, Jamil, or we can do it after the official start of the Q&A. And your obstacle course clip was, of course, very provocative. And it was, I want you to remind everyone roughly when that was filmed. If you said it, I forget. And if you maybe want to give us a quick and dirty update on what's happening in the real Naperville with the Real Mosque Project, if you feel up to doing that.
You know, it's really astounding because the Mosque Alert project, and of course, Obstacle Course, was adapted from a full-length stage play that grew out of a very, let's say, unorthodox or non-traditional new play development process, which involved sort of embedding ourselves in Naperville and the larger DuPage County area, and people somehow invested either as allies or adversaries, or as leaders within Muslim communities that were contending with this type of opposition to a proposed mosque or school, and in the case of Naperville, there were 2 proposed mosques, interestingly, one Sunni and one Shia. What we're seeing today, as we fast forward, is a reenactment of sorts, where one of the mosque communities has proposed an expansion of their existing facility, and the opposition is largely South Asian Hindu, whereas in the past it was more white, conservative, right-wing, evangelical, or people who might identify with some sort of scary threads on the right wing, on the American right wing. You're seeing a lot of the rhetoric of the Modi government, the Hindu nationalist government in India, playing out in online forums and and a town hall process, if you will, that to date over 500 people have requested the opportunity to speak. I'm not saying entirely Hindu, but it has shifted in a way in terms of how we look at the opposition. You know, the Muslim communities in the West suburbs are doing a lot of work to build alliances and to cultivate allyship. And we're very proud of the fact that we have been able to play a role in those processes, and that we've been able to quite literally be in the room in several of those conversations. And yet, you know, it's the unwanted gift that keeps on giving, where you see these these cases throughout the country of a type of hysteria emerging every time someone proposes to build a mosque. And we don't see a parallel hysteria around a proposed church or synagogue or Buddhist temple. And of course, you know, this gets conflated with national security conversations and existential fears and so forth. Carol, you're muted.
Yep, sorry. David, do you want to say a few words before we move into the Q&A?
Yeah, thank you. I would actually. Boy, this is fascinating. Whenever, as you all know, as you're all artists, and as you know, art and religion always go together, and yet they always push against each other. I mean, artists are always pushing the boundaries of certainly of orthodoxy, whatever that is, but of tradition. And art is what does that. I mean, art is expressive, it's authentic. And so what you're doing is not unusual, and it's been done before and it'll continue to be done, but it's fascinating to see how the diversity of your perspectives coming together and putting this all into an artistic form. I can certainly see, I can imagine, you know, when you were talking about the talkbacks, I can imagine what some of those conversations were like in those audiences, because I've been in those rooms before. But I give you all the credit in the world to, you know, I'm not an artist. My son is an artist, and I know I've watched him do this, and I'm not that way. You know, I'm a scholar, I'm a historian, so I think in very different ways. But to watch this process, you know, it's a credit to you, and we're thankful that people like you actually are able to do that, to bring those threads together and prompt us all to think and rethink and engage the conversation.
I have a bunch of questions lined up, but I want to just take the privilege of saying a little bit in response to David, since he and I go way, way back in global Lutheran circles and also academic circles. I would say not only art and religion push against each other, but maybe art and the academy push against each other a little, because as much as I was constantly reminding myself that this is a work of art, I was also, as someone who studies the Quran and the Bible side by side, you know, concerned that pretty much everything we attribute to the Islamic Jesus could be found somewhere, if not in the Holy Book, in the tafsir, in the medieval commentary. And so, again, some people would say, come on, give them artistic license. But I also wanted to be able to say, Corey did terrific research on this, and he used sources from, as Fuad said, the many sects types of Muslims are represented. And also what I really appreciate as a scholar of world religions is the emphasis on lived religion, that the tradition, the lived tradition comes through in the script and will come through even more in the fall production. And I'm really excited about that. I will field some, I'm again inviting the participants, the attendees to put more questions in, which I will try to monitor. But I have some follow-up questions that do relate a little more specifically to how Silk Road managed during the pandemic. I will tell you that several months into the pandemic, the Chicago Reader, which is one of the best sources for theater information in Chicago, sort of raised a cheer for Silk Road for already having figured out how to do digital theater art and do so many online things, such as the video clip, the first video clip you saw, the obstacle course from Mosque Alert. And so Chicago Reader gave Silk Road Rising credit for being way ahead of the game compared to lots of theater companies. But I think it would be great, since we already talked a little bit about the reactions to the 2018 workshop production, if we talk about a completely different thing for a few minutes, and that was a September 2020 event that Silk Road Rising sponsored. That was the most global event I've participated in during the pandemic. It was called Balloons Over Babylon. Was a documentary film that we all watched and discussed. And I would like either Jamil or Corey or both to tell you a bit about how the pandemic helped and hindered that event, roughly how many people participated, and maybe how many countries were represented. So either Jamil or Corey, if you want to talk a little bit about Balloons Over Babylon, that would be really fun, I think, for our audience.
Corey, should I? Oh. How about we both talk? Balloons Over Babylon, first of all, is a wonderful documentary film about an Iraqi man's determination to organize and realize a hot air balloon festival in southern Iraq, and really to cultivate positive feelings and to unite communities in this very fractured, polarized country. And so the opportunity to work with a Swedish filmmaker and the film's Iraqi subject and the Iraqi gentleman's son, so a filmmaker in Stockholm, the Iraqi gentleman Murtada in Baghdad, his son in London, and an Iraqi refugee living here in Chicago, working with refugee communities, particularly with women, having those four individuals as part of a conversation was really quite special, and I think made for a dynamic overview of how we talk about Iraq, how we understand or think about Iraq, and also just the Middle East and Muslims in general, and gave us just these beautiful insights. So I'll hand it to Corey.
I just also want to add the community angle of it. This event came together in no small part to our community engagement coordinator, Im Mead, who has moved on to another job now. But they orchestrated relationships we have in the West Ridge neighborhood of North Chicago with the MIRA, right, Jamil? The Middle Eastern Refugee Alliance?
Correct.
And then the Swedish American Museum, which is in the Andersonville neighborhood of Chicago. And so the three of us came together to get Murtada there, to get Folke there on the Zoom call. And we had about 100 people watching it live. And I don't think we know, other than like where the people that joined us were across the world. Those are the only ones we know for sure.
Thank you. I can just say again, it was an absolutely wonderful event. One of the most moving events that I experienced. I'd like to ask you, either of you, Corey or Jamil, about Epic. I noticed by coincidence that the presentation immediately following ours tonight is also about a completely different epic. But Ryan and I my husband and I live on the north side where this high school and community playwriting thing happens. I think it's called Empathic Playwriting Intensive Course, EPIC. We've run into people who have experienced that and have just been overwhelmed. And I think because that's something that thrived during the pandemic, I think, again, our viewers would like to hear about that. If either of you would like to talk about it, or Fouad, if you work with that, Fouad.
Yeah, one thing we've done with EPIC during the pandemic is specifically we've been doing in-person showcases of the plays written by these students. Most of them are like 5th through 12th graders. But we started an initiative we're calling Black Teen Lives Matter. And we've done 3 parts of it already. The first one was before Christmas Mubarak, so it also helped us lay the groundwork of how do we film remotely and edit something together. And so those are all available on our website too. On the homepage, you can watch the 3 parts that are out already. And the 4th part will be at the end of July. And these are all plays that are written by junior hires, high schoolers, about Black high schoolers, Black students, about their experiences. They've been talking about like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the Black Lives Matter movement long before it took such a center stage during the pandemic. And so we've using their plays to elevate their stories and share that with people across the country. Yeah, I know we had people in California and such, and maybe we had some from around the world even on that. And of course, the program itself has continued, working with a few different schools remotely. And we've been working on tailoring it to an online form. And we were able to offer it also to English language learners for the first time online, for the first time period. And it was online that we did this pilot program. And yeah.
And I can just ask you to elaborate the time that we saw a production pre-pandemic in person at the theater. You were using professional actors to act out these junior high plays. Can you just say a little bit about what that was like and how it affected the kids themselves?
Yeah, we've got a strong network of actors that we've always been doing in-school readings. At the end of it, we can't always have time to read every single play that was written, but at least like 10 or so get read from every class. And so they get to see these professional actors, and we always try to align them with the student body. So if it's a majority Black school, then we'll bring in Black actors. If there's a Latinx presence, we'll bring in Latinx actors and so forth, so that they can see themselves reflected back in their stories. And it's not just a bunch of white actors or something up there telling their stories. And then the same thing when we started doing the showcases in person, of having an ensemble that can reflect the students back to them.
I just want to add, one of the things that we're so excited about with EPIC, I mean, to what Corey was saying, was that we keep discovering these new applications for the program. The fact that it is now being adapted through a partnership with Asian Human Services in the Westridge neighborhood on the north side of Chicago for English language learners, which we will be able to take throughout the city, working with immigrant and refugee populations. That was something we sort of happened upon, or a realization in working with some immigrants who had signed up for the class at a park district in Westridge, and essentially articulated that this was helping them learn English. Working with populations with intellectual and developmental disabilities, we piloted EPIC with Misericordia, which is a large social service organization in the city that works with those populations, looking at intergenerational possibilities. We're working with the Council for Jewish Elderly and partnering with high schools and elementary schools in the city, and creating this kind of cross-generational or intergenerational art-making relationship. So I don't know what more we're going to discover, but I anticipate we will continue to discover.
Terrific. I'm going to make a quick statement and then ask Fouad if he'd like to weigh in on this question. As I mentioned, we first saw a Silk Road dramatic production in like the middle 2000s when we moved to Chicago. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe Silk Road was primarily a theater company doing live productions at that point. Obviously, you've morphed into so many different things. And Fouad, you've had an even closer eye on this progress over the 15 years that we've been here, you've seen it even more closely. Do you want to say anything about your observation about how Silk Road Rising has changed and adapted to serve all kinds of communities?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I probably started seeing things at Silk Road around the same time as you, Carol. And I was immediately drawn to it, engaged with it. And over the years, I started changing from just being a mere audience member, and I should say mere, and an important audience member, to you know, a collaborator, and I would often be called upon and talk back, things like that, to eventually, when my own materials started making it to readings, private readings and stage readings and things like that, and culminated in the production in fall of 2019, which since we're speaking about the pandemic, I have to say this. I mean, I was so blessed by having my work done at Silk Road, and I'm even more blessed that it happened at that time, because when they scheduled their seasons 1-2 years ahead of time, I think it was just the luck of the draw that I was put in that slot. I could have easily been put in the spring of 2020, and a very dear friend had her play there, being ready to go, and I attended their first rehearsal and things like that. And unfortunately, I feel very bad for her that it didn't go through, and also for all theater artists and what they had to go through during the pandemic. But to go back to your question about the relation and how Silk Road changed, instead of telling you about that, I'm going to tell you how artists, myself and everybody I talk to, feel about Silk Road. Anybody who works with Silk Road actually says, this is my artistic home. I feel, when I come back here, I feel that I'm at home. And it's amazing, really, how inclusive and welcoming Silk Road Rising has been. And of course, the mission that includes all of these artists that don't find these same opportunities in other places. I have a reading coming up next week, a private reading, and by chance, the actors involved in there are the same actors that were in the play. So I was sending an email and saying, we're going to have a mini reunion. And all of them were like, yay, we've been waiting for that for so long. So it's a lot of fun. It's a wonderful place to be.
Thank you. Super answer. I've got a couple more education related questions, but first, Jamil, I want to put you on the spot and say, I think not a lot of arts organizations in Chicago or anywhere have had a good 18 months fiscally. Are you willing to say just a little bit about how you've been able to sustain financial support for all of these endeavors despite not having live productions?
Well, you know, I have to give a lot of credit to the philanthropic community in Chicago, because I really feel that the foundations who've been supporting us and so many other arts organizations for years stepped up, and they stepped up early. And there was this recognition that, you know, we cannot allow this sector to disappear. We cannot allow this sector to essentially be destroyed by this pandemic. And so many of them created these relief funds that acted as a bridge. You know, now we did not have the expenses of full productions per se, but we still have payroll, and you know, we have a staff, and we have rent, and you know, all of these other expenses, and of course the education program being quite robust online. But between philanthropy and the city, state, and federal government, you know, these I'm going to say they kept us alive, and you know, we feel very confident about, and of course our individual donors, and you know, the generosity of those who support the company. We feel very confident about doing this production in the fall, you know, November, December, Christmas Mubarak. Now, you know, God only knows if this pandemic is going to make a resurgence of sorts. We hope not. But the plan is, we're doing virtual auditions. We're putting together a production team. We're having, meetings, is to return to live theater. And so we are hugely excited to be welcoming people back into the space. And, to your earlier point, Carol, to continue with the digital work and to look for ways to deepen that work. And, yes, we started in 2010, so it wasn't such a shocking adjustment. And I want to say to Fouad, thank you for your very kind and generous words. And we want you to know how important you are and special you are as a part of this Silk Road community and this Silk Road journey. So you and Carol are very valued sojourners, and that is what makes this work possible and so special.
Thanks. Another project that hasn't yet been mentioned is one called the Chicago Commons Project. And it might be of interest to a Hartford Seminary audience that this is a program that will engage with seminarians. So maybe just say a word about that, Jamil, and if you see and imagine some way that it will go forward digitally or in person or whatever.
Yeah, Chicago Commons Project is really a remarkable project on the part of Reverend Phil Blackwell, who was the senior pastor at the Methodist Church that hosts us. He has since retired, but he's very active with this program, and Cynthia Lindner, who is on the faculty at the University of Chicago Divinity School. So they have largely created this project for new clergy across the faith spectrum. And every year there is a new cohort of, I want to say, 12 clergy, and once again, representing different communities and different parts of the city, who really want to engage in urban ministry and walking the walk and looking at the application of art and social justice and economic justice, within their ministries. And so I have had the privilege of presenting every year for several years to each cohort. And each year they've been brought to a Silk Road show. And the hope is that this current cohort, but also the alums of the program, we can involve them with Christmas Mubarak and involve their respective congregations and communities. So it's a fantastic project. And I've met so many fascinating, clergymen and women who are pushing the envelope within their respective traditions, and are really looking at ways to be spiritual and progressive, and to have impact.
Thanks. We have a question from one of the attendees that starts with kudo. Thank you all for your efforts. This was very enjoyable. And here is the statement and a question. Art also creates awe. I am curious, how did you perceive these affections of the audience, and what were the implications of a moment of silence? And I guess, Corey, you would maybe be the logical person to answer that. Do you want me to repeat it? It's in the Q&A.
I got it. I've heard playwrights talk about how watching the audience is so important when they're watching their work, but I'm not necessarily a playwright since I'm more an adapter. I don't think I watch the audience much, but I know I've heard from Jamil and from others who talk about that experience of watching Christmas Mubarak being a religious experience, that it felt transcendent in ways. And yeah, I don't know about moments of silence. It's a good question.
I maybe will chime in that it's silence, a moment of silence or a line of silence is a tool that directors love, and good directors actually inject the silence in the right places. And I do watch the audience. I mean, I attended 95% of the performances of my own production, and I attended at least half of the, no, even more, of Christmas Mubarak, and I watched the audience because I've seen the show, and I love to see the reactions on their faces. Anecdotally, when we were doing a stage reading in, I believe it was 2017, of that play that was performed in 2019, with the director, we kept talking about a specific line, and he told the actor, she was giving a revelation, he told her, just give me a few moments of silence after that. And we sat both in the reading, and she did it exactly as he had said, and left the silence, and there was this collective gasp in the audience, and both him and I just looked each other in the eyes, and it's like, okay, we managed to get that reaction that we were looking for. So yeah, silences in scripts and emphasis are very, very important, just as important as the spoken word. And I hope that addresses the question, because there might be another dimension to that we have not covered. So please let us know.
Thank you, Fuad. We have just a little bit of time left. Maybe one thing to add about Christmas Mubarak, it's going to probably have the densest program book I've ever seen at a live production, with six essays, letters from people like Fuad and Jamil and Corey, and then 5 short essays and one longer essay. So we're hoping that the program book will actually become a little mini educational tool, along with online items. But maybe in closing, either Corey or Jamil or both, talk about what you're going to do in January 2022 and how that might relate to enhancing Christian-Muslim understanding.
Yeah, we're gonna film it. We'll make a video play. So like what you saw of Obstacle Course, there will be a version of Christmas Mubarak that's the same. So the show closes like the weekend before Christmas. We'll take the holidays off and reconvene in early January to re-rehearse a little bit, to figure out how we want to get it filmed. And then hopefully by the following Christmas, then we'll have the video one for Christmas 2022 to release to the world. And yeah, the program book will definitely be a source of great information to keep sharing.
And when it lives on video, it lives forever. And that is the hope, that we will be able to reach more and more people with this really beautiful story. And I just want to add something that Corey had said earlier. I experienced it as a deeply spiritual event each time I watched it, and I was so moved by it on that level. And Carol, to your point about a dense program book, that's only the start. Because the hope is to build a much broader body of literature and discourse around this project, both during the run of the live theater production and then with the release of the video plays. So we want scholars and lay people and clergy and everyone who wants to somehow weigh in on this. We will be inviting them.
Super. And to those of you at Hartford, maybe this can be the beginning of some future partnerships with your students and faculty and Silkworth Rising. That would be pretty exciting. I know a number of your MA graduates and PhD graduates around the world, but also here in Chicago. So we've already got a bit of a partnership that way for your alums that are in Chicago. I want to again thank Hartford Seminary and David Grafton and everybody who tuned in tonight, and thank the 3 people who shared the stage with me tonight. Any final comment or question from anybody before we sign off?
Thank you too, Carol. This was a really well-organized session.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Gratitude to everyone, and thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, Carol and Corey and Fuad and Jamil, thank you so much for fascinating fascinating opportunity. And it sounds like, Carol, the I don't want to say the gauntlet is laid down, but the opportunity is there for collaboration about artistic opportunities, interfaith in the arts. And on that regard, I can say that we had an interfaith art exhibition that was supposed to, we were supposed to host last year, but because of the pandemic, it was delayed. And we are going to be hosting it this year. I'm delighted to say that the organization Caravan, which is run by the curator Bishop Paul Gordon Chandler, is going to be, we're going to be the last stop of their international exhibition on Abraham Out of One Many, which is an art exhibition of Jewish, Christian, and Muslim artists, providing various portraits of the life of Avram, Abraham, and Ibrahim. So we're going to be hosting that exhibition in the fall, from October to November. And maybe there's a way we can figure out how to collaborate or bring people in from Silkworth Rising from the Chicago area. It's great. Anyway, thank you very much. So I'd like to shift gears a little bit as we think about how the pandemic affected interfaith and the arts, to look at, or at least be introduced to, some of the issues related to the pandemic and how congregations have been impacted in their daily life and work. And so I'm delighted to welcome to the, can't say to the podium or the floor, but to the screen, my colleague, Scott Duma, professor of sociology of religion and director of the Hartford Institute for Religion Research, who's going to talk a little bit about his work and upcoming work on the pandemic and its impact on congregations. Scott, welcome.
Thank you, David. Yeah, this is definitely not performance art of any sort, as you will all see soon. No, as David said, I'm a sociologist of religion and the director of the Hartford Institute for Religion Research. And in that role, the vast majority of what I do in my life is study congregations and try to understand the dynamics of congregations across different traditions. One of the primary research projects that we have at the Institute is called the Faith Communities Today project, that has been going on since 2000, is a multi-faith project of about 40 different groups that collaboratively survey and study their congregations every so many years. We've done now 7 national surveys, and we're just about to release the 2020 findings that were taken during the pandemic on how congregations fared in that. And we, over that period of time since 2000, we've surveyed over 50,000 congregations, and the 2020 survey was over 15,000 congregations, the largest survey that we've done. So that's mostly what I do in my life. How we've gotten to the pandemic was the pandemic came upon us, right? It was a moment of crisis, and I had been thinking about proposing a large survey or a study of congregational life, and it seemed to make sense to jump at this moment of crisis. And crisis is there's 2 characters in the Chinese symbol for crisis, and one of them is danger, and the other, people say, is opportunity. But it's really more like the other character is better understood as we're at a critical junction, and because it's not automatically opportunity and danger. You have the choice of acting on that opportunity or not. And that's the moment of crisis always gives you that possibility. And so we decided to really propose a very large project that would look at how congregations were faring in the pandemic, but probably even more importantly, to look at what the next 5 years are going to look like, to see how many of those practices that were so readily adopted so quickly. I mean, who would have ever guessed that congregations could change that fast? Not anyone who's ever worked in congregations. But lo and behold, they did. And so now the question remains, are they going to continue to capitalize on that innovation? Are they going to take some of those practices that really address the needs of their congregation and throw them away and go back to the old way of doing religious life? Or are they going to continue to build on some of that creativity? And so that's what we proposed, and that's part of what we're going to do. Let me share my screen real quickly, and I'll talk a little bit about our research, proposed research project, and then some of what we're already starting to find. So let me. I suppose you can see my shared screen. Let's hope so. Anyway,
Yeah.
And one of the things that you're all going to experience is this is the first showing of our new logo for the project called Exploring the Pandemic Impact on Congregations. That this would be our logo. So we're excited, and if you want to share your feedback on that, lovely. But there it is. You know, one of the things that I've done over the last year is talk to a lot of religious leaders. In this case, mostly Christian leaders, but these were some of the quotes that we were hearing as they started to reflect back on what had transpired. You know, I'm not going to read all of them, but you can see some of these statements, and you know, clearly there was evidence that they were all kind of taken by surprise. You know, like, let it never be said again that the church cannot change quickly. You know, we heard back and forth how we needed to innovate. We knew we needed to, but all of a sudden it was done faster than we would have ever guessed. And that bottom quote, I have heard over and over again, this level of optimism by religious leaders. I feel like as a church, we have won the pandemic. They were able to make change, they were able to innovate, and they still were able to hold the congregation together and feel like they accomplished something over the last year and a half. That's an interesting thing, and it remains to be seen whether we see that going forward. So let me tell you a little bit about this project, Exploring the Pandemic Impact on Congregations, affectionately known now as our EPIC research project. EPIC, get it? API. Anyway, this is all hypothetical. When David asked me to come and talk about our research project, it's like, we don't have the grant yet. So the grant is actually in front of the Lilly Endowment Board at this moment. And sometime in June, we will find out whether or not we get this grant. So I'm really hoping that David's invitation for me to talk about this doesn't jinx it and we don't get it. But if we don't get it, I'm blaming David. In any case, it is not an insignificant grant. I mean, or an insignificant project. So that's why the PowerPoint, because it's pretty complex. It's going to take place over the next 5 years if we have the grant. And at the moment, because of the Lilly Endowment, it focuses only on Christian churches. However, we're also in conversation with Templeton about the possibility of getting funding to cover non-Christian religious traditions as well, much as we do with the Faith Communities Today project. It's, as I said, a large project that's multifaceted, it's collaborative, and it involves multiple different methods to study not just how congregations responded to the COVID-19, but what the impact, the long-term impact might be. So the idea is to track faith communities over the coming 5 years to see what some of these effects might be on practice. And the three primary questions that we're trying to address and are going to guide our work is how did the congregations respond to the pandemic? So it's going to look back on what you did and how you did it. But then more importantly, what are the long-term consequences? And then finally, and what Lilly Endowment is really interested in is a description of what congregational life is going to look like post-pandemic. So an up to the date sort of snapshot of things. So those are our primary questions, but obviously we have many other questions of importance, and three that we've targeted for the research from the team, I think are really significant, especially around this pandemic. And the first one is, what unique challenges has the pandemic put upon minority congregations? And that is true not just in the Christian community, but across religious communities. There is an inordinate amount of weight that has been carried by minority congregations for many different reasons. And we want to explore that, and that requires then an additional sort of focus and sampling on those communities. We also want to look at how congregational leadership has coped with this. Anecdotally, we have heard those stories of hope that I showed at the beginning, but also exhaustion and burnout. And I'm not sure I can continue on in this profession. And so we want to look at where that is challenging and where that works well. And then third, and this is sort of obvious, how technology is changing congregational life. And that has been a question, I think, at least in my research for the last 20 years, but now it is evident in all congregations for the most part that screens and streaming and Zoom and other kinds of technologies really need to be incorporated into the life of the congregation. So let me tell you, as I said, this is going to take over 5 years, and it's going to be multiple different pieces of research. And so the best way to do this is to sort of look at a little bit of a picture. So 5 years time, the first component is going to be large national surveys of key informants. And that's going to be, we're going to draw on our network of relationships that we built over the last 20 years with this Faith Communities Today project, starting with the pre-pandemic and mid-pandemic survey we did of 15,000 as kind of a baseline of this is where congregations were. Then we are going to continue with two smaller topical surveys on different themes, on religious education or on clergy health or on new ministries that were created during the pandemic. So we're going to survey a few thousand congregations a couple of times a year throughout the 5 years. But then we're also going to do two very large national surveys, hopefully 10,000 congregations or more, one in 2023 and a second one in 2025, so that we can compare what we found in 2020 with 23 and 25 to see what kinds of change is going on. So those are surveys. They're mostly filled out by the religious leader, and they give a window on the breadth of what's happening, but they don't tell much else right? You can only ask, they can only answer a question that you ask. They're usually not open-ended. So you get a kind of skewed picture of what's there. But we're also going to do a different kind of survey. We're going to select 300 congregations that agree to be surveyed throughout the 5 years. So we'll follow 300 congregations. Every year, we'll do a survey with them. We'll do some virtual observations and some interviews. But that 300 will be the same group of churches every year. So we'll be able to actually watch to see how they change in a much more nuanced fashion than these larger national surveys through faith communities today. Again, these are mostly surveys. There may be a little bit of interviewing, but it's a kind of superficial level for a lot of congregations. Well, that tells you something, but it doesn't tell you enough of like why things are changing, what's really happening. And so to try to get at some of that, we're also incorporating into this more qualitative research. And so what we've done is picked 8 locations around the country that sort of represent different aspects of the regions of the country, but also because the pandemic didn't hit every region equally, right? Some areas suffered more. Some areas fought it because it wasn't politically expedient for them, or so there's a lot of diversity that this pandemic created that we wanted to try to tap into. So the 8 different locations are scattered throughout the country, and what we're going to do then is select 12 congregations in each of those locations and spend a good 6 months with them or a few months with them. We'll do participant observations, we'll do interviews, we'll do some attender surveys, and we'll also come back 2 years later and do a small follow-up. Those conversations we have with them and more direct interactions with those congregations, roughly about 100, will flesh out some of the larger trend findings that we're seeing in the national surveys. They'll help us unpack some of what we see in the large surveys. How's that really playing out in the country? And then we also have created, in addition to our advisory councils and stuff, we've also created a group that we call our coordinating group, collaborative partners. And there are a whole host of other organizations that are also doing research on congregations and the pandemic. And so we want to partner with them. And so we've brought them together as a group of conversation partners. So there's a huge study going on technology and congregations. Well, because of that, we don't really need to do that as part of this EPIC research. We're going to instead partner with that person and their research to coordinate what we find and what they find. And we're trying to do that with the Association for Theological Schools. We're trying to do that with chaplaincy researchers. We're trying to leverage our relational networks, knowing full well that this pandemic has affected every dimension of religious life. Well, we can't study that for 5 years, every dimension. So we're trying to create partnerships so that we can cover more ground with not having to do all the work ourselves. So that's the EPIC research project. Now, I'm not pulling this off by myself, and we have lofty goals, right? Obviously, we're tracking and exploring the vitality of religious groups. That's what we're trying to do. But the primary thing that we want to do is communicate those research findings, not for academics or scholars, or journal articles and books. We really want these research findings to be practical and useful for religious leaders and religious communities. And so the platforms that we're building are really going to be our primary way of sharing what we're finding throughout the 5 years. We're not waiting to the end to write our magnum opus. Instead, what we're doing is trying to get this material out in readable form, in usable fashion throughout the 5 years. But we're also trying to build a repository of knowledge for about congregational resilience and vitality, so that when, heaven forbid, this happens again in another 100 years, we will have this collected set of data and research that people will be able to learn from, and will also be available for other scholars to use. As I said, I'm not doing this alone. I am the principal investigator, but I'm joined by a fantastic team of folks, some of whom I think might be on here, and at least they better be, or they're not getting paid this month. No. My co-worker and great friend, Allison Norton, is a faculty associate here. Patricia Tevington and Andrew Gardner are both postdoctoral visiting faculty associates at the school, and will be with us for 2 years, and then perhaps we will have additional staff for other 2 years. And then we have also hired a fantastic project director, Sarah Brown, who kind of keeps us all organized and moving in the right direction. And she is also the executive director for the Faith Communities Today project. So I draw on her a lot because in my advanced age, I forget all the details. Sarah has all the details and tells me exactly what to do. So it's a great team, and we have slots for a few other staff yet to come. We are creating some real investment in writing and in photography and in artistic display of some of this, because we know that if we want to make sure our material is useful to a large audience, it should be professional and not just academic. So we're going to have other staff join us. Plus, we have really leveraged the networks that we've created at the Institute and at Faith Communities Today. So we have over 60 people who are part of the regional teams, who are part of Faith Communities Today, and part of our advisory teams. So you may see the faces of 5 of us on the screen, but in fact, there's 10 times as many who are participating in this research project. It's a very exciting time, and I'm quite thrilled to hopefully get the money and do this research. I think, yeah, we have a minute or two. Let me sketch a few things that we're learning so far about some of the research that we've done and some of the material that we've already been looking at. So nobody knows what we're learning so far. I mean, it's still in motion, and every new survey that comes out has slightly different variation of things. You know, Dr. Rashid, the keynote you heard just yesterday, you know, her study, other studies that have come out, they're all little slices of what's going on. And what we're going to try to do is learn from all of those, and then also have this larger project so we have a more complete picture of what's going on. But we're certain that this is going to be some form of disruptive force for the long haul. How it plays out, we don't know yet, but it is going to be there. And again, as I said before, it affected various groups differently, and they responded differently. And so we have to have as comprehensive a look at this as possible, because all groups were not equally affected by this or responded to it. And then finally, size makes a huge difference. The larger the congregation of any tradition, the better they have weathered the storm in many ways. Likewise, the longer a congregation goes without physically meeting, the harder it's going to be for them. We're pretty certain that's the case. We've also discovered, us and the research of other researchers, many congregations have fared fairly well financially, yet about half say they're still somewhat challenged because of the pandemic. And that's especially true for those congregations under 100 attendees. But again, as I showed with those early quotes, a lot of the faith communities, even having suffered, feel pretty upbeat and self-congratulatory about this. And almost all of them are saying that they're embracing new opportunities. But so you hear on the one hand this optimism, but on the other hand, this kind of exhaustion. And are we going to emerge stronger, right? Is this crisis going to be danger and us not act on the opportunity? Who knows? Then also, even as people are now beginning to flock back into worship services and sanctuaries and gatherings, the question is, are the people really going to come back? Because we're still not back to pre-pandemic level. And how many of those folks have just found it's easier to go do something else during this time, or that their investment in the life of this community really wasn't worth getting up early on Sunday morning or Friday noon or Saturday morning, right? So it's an interesting challenge and time, and hopefully our funded research will be able to tell some of that. So that's a snapshot of what we're trying to accomplish with our exploring the pandemic's impact on congregations, and I'm sure you will hear me yell if we get the money and get a chance to do the research.
And hopefully I won't get blamed then.
Yes, indeed.
So thank you. This is going to be fascinating. Just a couple of comments. Last night in our first panel, the question was asked of the panelists who were involved in interfaith activities that were impacted by the pandemic. What will happen after COVID? How will these activities change? And it was interesting because some said, oh, we're definitely going to keep these kind of virtual gatherings going.
Yeah.
And another said, no, we're going back to meeting face to face. We're just going to go back. So it'll be interesting how congregations or religious communities who are cohesive units, or at least supposed to be cohesive units, respond. And then just anecdotally, among my clergy colleagues, they certainly have both sides of what you mentioned, this kind of excitement about the possibilities, but the exhaustion about the energy that it took to do this, and the political divide in the country is still in the congregations about how to go forward is there, at least from what I'm hearing anecdotally.
No, I think that's right. And, there truly are, and I think you were hinting at it in some of your titles in these sessions. There were multiple pandemics, in a sense, over the last year and a half, and how to sort those out and deal with each of the issues in some sense separately, because they've all kind of melded into a challenging situation for faith communities.
We look forward to further communication from you and the team about findings, and it's exciting. So thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So the last thing I want to do tonight is invite my colleague Tina Demo forward to, I would be remiss if we didn't spend our closing moments talking about, as we come into this new era, some new degree programs that we have. So Tina, can you please introduce yourself and spend a few minutes in closing as we talk about our new degree programs?
Sure. Thank you, David. Well, for all of you, this is a brief commercial break about the wonderful programs that we have at Hartford Seminary. I'm so delighted that you have been part of the Luce-Hartford conference these last few days. And I appreciate the opportunity to just say a word about my role at the seminary and my colleague, and what we aim to do, and hope that we will be able to engage you more in the life of Hartford Seminary in our very exciting future. I'm the director of admissions and recruitment and admissions, and I dabble a little in financial aid. And Michelle Federer is our assistant director of admissions. So we're the go-to team for those of you who may decide that you'd like to take a course with us as for credit or as an auditor, or just general questions that you may have about the seminary. Of course, we're in the midst of rolling out 3 new programs, 2 of which we are still recruiting for and enrolling new students for, namely a 36 credit Master of Arts in Chaplaincy and a 36 credit Master of Arts in Interreligious Studies. They're designed to be completed in a 2-year time frame on a full-time basis, but most of our students are part-time and usually do about 2 courses a semester. So if you have any questions about those 2 programs, which the faculty and staff have spent so much time working on and designing programs that will really meet the needs of you students in the future, please do contact the admissions office, Tina or Michelle, and we'll be happy to help you. Our chaplaincy program, I just want to say a quick word about that. Is a redesign and exciting new approach to chaplaincy. As you may know, we have a 20-year history in the area of Islamic chaplaincy, and we are building for the future by broadening our approach in chaplaincy, still retaining our specialization in the Islamic chaplaincy, in the Islamic studies and Islamic chaplaincy area. So those are the 2 programs that are still open for the fall. We offer financial aid in the form of institutional grants, and we have some work-study jobs on campus, as well as we participate in the federal loan program. So I will end with that and simply say that we're delighted that you're now part of the Hartford Seminary family, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. And we should say that there will be a celebration this fall celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Islamic Chaplaincy Program. So more to come. So this concludes our 5th annual Luce-Hartford Conference on Christian-Muslim Relations. We thank you for joining us over these last 3 sessions. We hope you'll come back and view these videos. They'll be posted, and that this will engage you further in the work of Hartford Seminary and interfaith work in general. Take care, everyone, and God bless.